Welcome. Hello, everybody. I hope you had a great weekend. My name is Lynn Miller, and I want to welcome you to 50 Shades of Business, brought to you by IntellectualRadio.com and sponsored by My Chocolate Soul. This is with entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurs, so that everybody gets to learn together. And today's show is Sharpening Your Competitive Edge. Joining me today is Parisa Banya of Sixth Sense and Heidi Treichman. And the name of your company is Growth Strategies, right? Because it was just like mine, Growth Stage Tech, and I couldn't remember. Growth Strategies Institute. Mm-hmm. And I'd also like to welcome Susan Kaleni. And she runs the Optimal Health and Wellness Center in Glen Ellen.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Well, we're going to talk today about sharpening your competitive edge. And before we get into what that means, I'd like to give you a little chance to talk about why you started your companies. So, Parisa, Sixth Sense.
Yeah, Sixth Sense Strategy is a strategy consulting firm for startup and growth stage companies. And the reason why I started Sixth Sense is that generally I thought everyone was doing a lot of broadcasting, but we're not doing enough listening. And that is within the context of how it is that we find customers, what their pain points actually are, how do we communicate in ways that's meaningful, in ways that are meaningful to them, such that they would find a connection with us, an emotional connection with us, and then go ahead and make the sale. A lot of times companies I find are more inwardly focused, and the work that I do with my clients is to recognize that in as much as that we have sales objectives, other people have objectives in their lives of what they need, what they have a pain, and what can we do to kind of put ourselves as a solution to the pain as opposed to pushing product on them. So it was very important for me to establish this idea of empathetic leadership and empathetic strategy in whatever it is that we do in the business context. And thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Heidi.
Well, Growth Strategy Institute, I started the company because I was working with large companies in the role of a marketing director, chief marketing officer, and whatnot. And I realized that there was a disconnect between some of the sales and the marketing, and they weren't coexisting. They were struggling because marketing provides all of the great tools and the pretty things, and they package things really well, and they create all the communication. And sometimes the salespeople who are out there are hearing and seeing different types of things. So they want to be able to be heard, and they want to be able to coexist in a way that everybody's successful. And so as I started looking at really the role of Growth Strategy Institute, growth isn't just about having great marketing, having good sales, growing the top line. We focus a lot on that, but it really is understanding all the aspects of your business. You know, are your profit margins where they need to be? Do you have appropriate funding? Are you positioning your company to sell down the road? What does your vision and mission look like, and how are you going to get there? So it's really starting with the end in mind and then working backwards to try and achieve that. So
we find that there's a lot
of, thank you.
We find that's missing a lot in people's strategies, that they just know what they want. They know, and I'm not going to forget about you, Susan, but it's just really important that we say that is really our definition of scaling. Everything you just said is really having all of that structure in place, because then you know who you want to attract, you know what you want them to do, and you know what you want next from them, and you're paying attention to their issues all the time. And that's the competitive edge, is the listening that Parisa said and the structure that you talked about. And Susan, what had you start your business?
Well, my business, Optimal Health and Wellness Center, was really born out of frustration. I am not a good team player, so I wanted to have a playground in an area in which I could lead. I had a vision. I wanted to lead. And I ended up finding out that I wanted to be a chiropractor, a natural doctor, because I really wanted to help people. And so the idea of having my own practice came out of some of my own health challenges. I was asthmatic. I couldn't breathe. I had to walk around with drugs all the time. And so one of the things that led me into chiropractic was my ability to actually find other health practitioners that helped me get better. And I went to a chiropractor who helped me become asthma-free. I still am prone to asthma, but I'm not on the medications. I became much healthier, and it was through adjusting. It was through lifestyle nutrition, and that really brought me through into becoming a chiropractor. And I wanted to start my own practice. I wanted to be close to home, and I wanted to have my autonomy. I know that's asking a lot, but those were the reasons that brought me into the natural healthcare field. It's a little different, obviously, than the allopathic field, but it's also born to help people figure out what they can do on their own. So it's really a passion for me. And that's what brought me into creating my own business, which I knew nothing about when I started, by the way. It's been quite a growth experience.
Yeah. Now, we do this out of passion, and then somebody forget. It's sort of like having children. You do this out of passion, and then you say, why didn't they tell me this other part? Yeah. So when it came to growing your business, what were some of the things that you were advised to do to scale that you did, and maybe some lessons?
Well, one of the things that I was taught was to create a vision, have a 5-year plan, follow that plan. And I thought, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I would never get in my car without figuring out where I'm going to be driving. So why would you start a business without not knowing where you're going to go? But what really has happened is that those plans and those visions are going to change. And if you don't adapt to the changes, the way I want to do something is not the way my patients want to do it. It's not the way the customer wants to do it. So really being adaptive and figuring out what is the need of the market, what is the need of your clientele, and making those changes. And if you stay too much to what you want, you're not serving anybody. Right. One of the things that did happen to me is a lot of people, since I'm in the natural healthcare field, they wanted to learn about weight loss. Well, that wasn't what I was doing as a chiropractor and natural medicine, but people, that's what they wanted. So I thought, oh, let me try helping them in a way that would be beneficial. But what they wanted was a small, structured program telling them what to do without all the superfluous things that I wanted to teach them. And another business was born out of that. So again, that was adapting to what the market need was and what the people wanted, as opposed to what I wanted for them. And then,
when I started Growth Stage Tech, which is what kind of birthed this show, I wanted to do it for women. Mm-hmm. And I quickly found out that if we don't all work together, it just isn't going to work. Right. So Growth Stage Tech went from Women in Growth Stage Tech to Growth Stage Tech real fast. Mm-hmm. And we are really here to bring corporate partners, entrepreneurs, investors, and the rest of the services community together so that everybody can grow faster, including any size corporation. Because being an entrepreneur and adding revenue is all anybody really wants, right? So let's talk about the competitive edge. Sometimes just like really scaling. Just that you've thought about it in advance and you're ready for anything. That's one competitive edge. And that's something that Heidi mentioned. But there's a few other competitive edges. And I wanted Parisa to talk about this. She is a business whisperer. I'd love to know where you got that name. And what else can you say about how people discover what their competitive edge is?
Great question. Thank you so much for asking that. For me and for my clients, the number one thing it's important for me to do is to uncover what I call their business superpower. And their business superpower is essentially made of 4 ingredients. A keen understanding of who their customers are and who their customers aren't. And sometimes knowing who your customer is not is one of the most important exercises to undergo. So that's the first thing, knowing who they are. The second important thing is, well, what's keeping them up at night? Sometimes we get headaches, sometimes we get migraines. People aren't going to buy anything to help their headaches, but they'll buy something to help a migraine. So understanding from their business context what their migraine is. 3 is, what is the core thing you do that is the key solution to whatever that most painful pain is, that most painful migraine is? And 4 is what your competition killer is. ultimately is the unique value proposition. That is your business superpower. And the reason why I think it's so important, I go through this exercise with all of my clients, is because when you don't have your superpower in place, when you don't have that connective tissue, that DNA of your business in place, lots of things happen. Customers go away, they don't come back. It becomes harder to close a sale. It takes a long time to close a sale. From an internal perspective, the teams don't work with each other very well. Investors aren't interested in writing you a check to help you scale. There are a number of different things that appear to be like a sales and marketing issue, but really what it comes down to more than anything else, if you're like, gosh, I've tried everything and nothing seems to work, that is the number one sign that your connective tissue is not so connective, that there is something kind of decaying on the underlying foundation of your business, and it pays off immensely to say, all right, well, what are those 4 questions again? Who's my customer? What's the most painful pain? What's the core thing I do that's the best solve for that pain? And what my competition killer is. Sounds simple, and at its core, I suppose it is, but it actually gets a little bit harder and more complex the more you try to unpack it. But it's a worthy exercise. It really, really is. And all my clients have said, I'm so glad we did this. And I'm so glad that you made me spend the time to do this, because I now know what success looks like. To your point, I now know what my road ahead looks like. And I know the steps I need to take to be able to get there.
So I wanted to ask, when they discovered their business superpower and their unfair advantage, do you have an example of when they did have it and they didn't have it?
You know, there's a really good example of a missing superpower or a superpower that just never was there in the first place, and it's Uber. Uber is an excellent example of this. So this is a Silicon Valley darling, can fundraise like nobody's business, was able to market like nobody's business. But, you know, the fact that it got kicked out of London, it couldn't make it in the Russian markets and the Chinese markets, or closed markets. It means that it didn't understand closed markets. All of the horrible sexual harassment stuff that happened last summer, the fact that the CEO and founder was summarily dismissed and replaced, all of those things are a sign that the superpower is missing. And it's bad press, it's bad PR. All of those things that seemingly had to do with something other than a superpower actually was nothing but missing superpower. That is my favorite example. Sears is another really good example. Mm-hmm. Lululemon, Wells Fargo, anything that happened in the financial crisis, those are businesses that forgot what their superpowers were. And once you deviate from it, that's when bad things start to happen.
So it might be that they didn't, it's not that they never had it. It might be that they forgot about it.
It might be they forgot about it, or
technology or something shifted. Like Sears never quite grasped. They started off in the catalog business, you know, and then things started to morph. Life started to change. Business started to look for different ways to purchase items. You know, they really weren't wanting to do online purchase. They wanted to keep their stores. They wanted to keep their service.
But sorry to jump in. I'm feeding off you nicely. That plus they forgot that the reasons why customers came back was because of this. I know they will take care of me at Sears. Yeah. And Sears said that's a business expense if we give too much customer service. Yes. But that was a sweet sauce. I remember going to Sears, and my mom would take me to the candy shop if I behaved. My dad only went to Sears for the hardware appliances exclusively. People who grew up in and around Chicago in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that's where you went. Yeah. And once they deviated from it, to your point, and technology changed and people changed, Sears did not change. Yeah. So they needed to take this refresh and say, what's going on? Mm-hmm. And how do I redefine myself for whatever this new normal looks like?
Mm-hmm. Well, so I think that's a really good point, is the customer service. really, are we getting that anymore these days? And that's a big issue. And I remember you were talking many years ago to me about low-hanging fruit, the people that do come into your business, and and how do you market to them, and how do you get them to come back? I read just recently that, and I don't know how true this is, but it's up to 60% of the people that come to you, if they don't return right away, you've kind of lost them. Right. So if you're not serving them, and if you're not finding out what their needs are, and versus what you think their needs are, you're going to be losing that. And that's a great way to play into and expand your business, is by servicing your existing clientele so that they become your repeat business. It's that 80-20 rule.
Absolutely. And it's much cheaper to hold on to a customer than it is to try to find new people. Yeah. So it makes sense to not only find the right people in the first place, but then what's important to them and meet them where they are at that point.
Right.
Well, in terms of what's important to them, that can be the source of innovation. So there's a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a lot of technology companies out there, and they're innovating like crazy. And sometimes they remember to talk to their customers before, or sometimes they don't talk to them before and they have to talk to them later. Or even if you figured it out for one product, you think you know the answer for the roadmap and you don't. So Heidi, can you give us some examples about on the innovation side of a competitive advantage and where people used innovation to grow? And based on their competitive advantage, like what was an example that you've worked with?
Let me think a minute. I'd have to say from an innovation using, let's just say, technology.
Yeah.
One of my clients started out years ago, really developing the payroll processing, the credit card, all the things that take place. And as you know, with all of the things that go on as far as people stealing identity, people taking money, it's very easy. There's a lot of stuff that happens when you are doing a transaction. And something as simple as Home Depot, and they got breached, or Target, because their technology went through the HVAC in one of them. And so unfortunately, they were able to pull all that client data. So one of my clients took the last 5 years researching and looking at ways to develop a very simple one-line code to go in and actually protect the credit card when you are checking out. So they have this middleware that goes in that a device can use when you're swiping your card. So you look at a company like Verifone or other companies that manufacture that, they can leverage that, and a customer can use it, or client of the device, and help them figure out how to protect their clients. And when they get that type of security and protection, they feel good.
Yeah.
They know their money's safe. Another thing was years ago when the internet wasn't really big, and we're trying to figure out how to get people to use the internet to get business. That was just such a, okay, I'm dating myself, but it was so cool to watch it grow. And so we were like, let's see if we can use just basic stuff like radio ads to get them to come to our URL back then. And so we increased our requests for proposals like 86% by something so simple. And it's just being able to be aware of what's happening, how to use the technology, understanding it, staying ahead of it, and being able to find the right partners, because we can't know everything. So, I'm not an SEO expert, but when my clients have SEO issues, I know who to go to, because I partner with, an individual I've been working with for years who does it really well. And that's really important, to find those partnerships and those relationships that you can leverage and use the best talent, because we don't have all the answers.
That's true.
And that's one of the things I think we do when we're entrepreneurs, is we start out with our passion and we think we have all the answers.
Right.
And if you don't utilize other people, other professionals to help you, then you are going to fail eventually. Yeah. And one of my mentors once said to me, if you don't love numbers, at least learn to love what they mean. So find the right people. And women are traditionally not so good at asking those questions or asking for help. We're very much service givers, service providers. And so I think finding those other people, that's going to make or break your business many times, because you think you know these answers. And maybe you do. I certainly did not. So it was really essential for me to find myself outsourcing and finding other people that could guide me and help me to to really maximize my business and maximize my skill sets.
Yeah, I tell everyone to work smart as opposed to work hard, mainly because I just think it gets all of us to wherever it is we're trying to go much faster. And it's a little bit more fun to work with other people than to be kind of by yourself in your own dark corner somewhere.
Right.
So it makes sense to collaborate, and it makes sense to kind of celebrate each other's strengths to be able to create opportunity for everyone. There's a lot of room for everyone to be successful.
Right.
It doesn't have to be an either or kind of thing.
Yep. There's plenty of food at the table.
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely.
No one's gonna starve.
Yeah, no one's gonna starve.
That's true. Susan, I wanted to, you're in a business that could look like it's highly competitive.
Yes, it is.
Chiropractic, natural. So what do you consider your competitive advantage? How did you discover it?
Well, how did I discover chiropractic?
No, that's just that, there's Chiro One out there. There's all these different chains. So I'm curious to know how you've differentiated.
Oh, and I can comment on that because I've worked with Susan and other chiropractic clients. And you truly provide such a different level of service. And I have never and I've worked with a lot of physicians and chiropractors, the attention that you spend with each patient and the time that you commit is amazing. And I think that's one of your very unique differentiators. On top of that, you look at such unique solutions that some of the traditional chiropractors will not do, just for fear of worrying about liability or, I've tried some really cool things at your practice that just are incredible.
Like what, Heidi?
Well,
you actually did a
detox. I did this infrared sauna. I did the foot thing. I did the metal. I tried everything.
Yeah, she did.
I mean, why not? If it's going to work, I'd never done it. I thought, because my traditional chiropractic clients, you go in, they look at you, they do a spinal, even the way you adjust is different.
Things that are not painful or hard on people or scary for people, but none of it's painful to begin with. Yeah. But one of the things that is different is the fact that in the medical world or the health world, people don't get a lot of attention. They get the average is 7 minutes to get in and out with your healthcare provider or your doctor, and then you don't really get time to really figure out what's going on. So one of the things that I do, and one of the things I found was helpful, is to be able to spend time with people, and that's a luxury that people both want and don't want. They want the time, they want the energy, but then they don't have time for it either. So it's a little bit of a catch-22 because we're so busy. The average person is so busy. So one of the things I like to do, and where I'm moving my business and my practice, is really more to that online. People can figure things out, fill out their forms online, get on the app, do things, and so that makes it easier for them. But then my strategy is to spend time with them and look a little bit underneath. And the timing is a big issue because people aren't getting that. And you can't find a solution for someone's health problems in just 7 minutes. So spending more time has been key for me, but it also requires just that, more time. So I have to, like you were saying, I have to work smarter, not harder. And that's the use of technology, the use of forms, online, prepping, letting people know and making it easier for them. Because as a small business owner, I don't have that luxury of having 500 people working for me. I don't even want that, actually. I actually like it to be small. That works for me. But I need to use technology and using time to help people so that I can truly help them. Because that's going to be my biggest referral. Somebody actually getting better and feeling better, and that's how I get people to come back in. So it's a little bit of an odd strategy, but it works well for me.
So for you, technology was really important in terms of scaling for you.
It is important not only in my practice with lasers and other types of things that we use to help people, but technology is huge for me because I have to get people to utilize it. Because again, I work with people that are long distance, that aren't close, so and do virtual appointments. So scaling and having that technology, having FaceTime, having Skype, using those things has been very, very essential for me as a small business owner.
Wow. So you have some of your clients are
our distance.
So everything isn't about your hands being on them. Some of it's
Yes, because even though I'm a chiropractor and I work with people with my hands, but I also do a lot of functional medicine, which is using lab tests to help interpret people's health issues and then finding nutritional and lifestyle ways in order to get them to be healthier and function better and to start healing. So it's a little bit, I do a couple different things, but again, that means I have to use technology in a different way. And I didn't always want to do that. In fact, I didn't want to do any of it because it's not my skill set. I'm not good at it. So I had, like you said, to outsource, have people help me, and then learn. And the learning is in the doing. I've made plenty of mistakes. And if it wasn't for the mistake, I've made more mistakes than I want to admit to. But making those mistakes is what helped me figure out what is a better path. How do I serve people better? How do I serve myself better? How does it become win-win? And it's only through failing that I've figured a few things out. I'm sure there'll be some more failure in the future because I forgot who said it. Somebody said failure is fertilizer. Wallow in it, and I thought, okay, but you know what I mean. You have to learn. The learning is in the doing, and we don't always know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, I really like that you started talking about outsourcing, and I wanted to bring it back to Heidi for a second and talk about how do you develop when you're working with people who are wanting to scale and wanting to grow. It's a constant conversation about who's in the market and who's available. I said I'm always on the hunt for whoever's going to make the difference for entrepreneurs. So how do you go about doing that?
For me personally, or my clients, or
pretty much your clients.
And it's more about looking at outsourcing of what makes sense. So first of all, when you're starting and you start looking at every aspect of the business, because a lot of people sit there and they'll look at the front, where's the sales, where's the marketing, we're doing all these things, but then they're not looking at the back office, the operational side. And here you are, and you're finding people who are, processing in-house, and they're doing all these operational things that are consuming a lot of resources and a lot of time. And you start thinking, okay, where can you better leverage time and money, right? And so you start looking at where those points are to be able to take your company and figure out where it makes sense. But then when you're outsourcing, it is so important to find the right partners. I've helped companies raise money and find money and be able to grow their business through capital. And I was talking to this client, and he got with a factoring company, and who I know. And
it's like a payday loan.
Oh my gosh, they made it so, and it was so difficult that now he can't undo what he did. And he has 5 businesses, and none of them are connected. And he thought he could just bring this all together. And at the end of the day, he either has to sell one of these companies or multiple companies and figure out really how to find what works best and where the company that can grow. I call it the cash cow. Where's your cash cow? And then you outsource the things that he tried to do everything in-house, absolutely everything. Small staff, and you can't do it because something will fall through the cracks. So it's really important to look at all the different aspects of the company. And there's not that many, functions really. When you look at the big scheme of things, when you start breaking it down and getting into bigger companies, it's a different issue. But, I had a client tell me, I said, what was the biggest lesson you learned? She said, well, 3 things. I needed a really good accountant, I needed a really good banker, and I needed a really good attorney. And at first I didn't have those. And so I didn't know how to structure my business. I didn't know how to figure out those things. And they helped me align what I needed to do, because my, profit margins, if you don't know what your margins are, and you don't know where your costs are going, and you don't understand the accounting aspect, you don't need to go to school to become a CPA. You just need to outsource and find the right person who can help you with your accounting or your month-end closing or your payroll processing or your sales training, whatever it is, even your marketing. There's some marketing pieces, and I worked with a very large company, and they had a whole huge department, and I just played a very little role because they needed something very specific. And so I could come in and do that job and then step out.
So what was the specific thing they needed?
They were merging a bank together. And so they needed to look at the products. There's many products in banking. And because it's so regulated, it's really important that anything that's communicated, if you don't do it right, the feds can come in and fine you and do a lot of different things. So you have to really look at all of the moving parts. Then when you're dealing with a financial institution, you have compliance, you have marketing, you have operations, then you have all the cash station people and the people who run, the retail. And so you have to bring all those people together. So I came in and looked at the whole program and developed the map to help them do that. And then the communication pieces.
Great.
Yeah.
So Parisa, you've had a couple of really great success stories when you've had people who've discovered their superpower and then it's turned into lots of money for them. I don't know if you can talk about them specifically, but what was the turning point in terms of them getting there, really seeing their competitive advantage? Because some of these things all look the same on the surface. Yeah, especially in like the cosmetics industry.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the most rewarding thing about the entire experience, and I think both of you probably experience this as well, is that when that light bulb goes off, you're like, oh, it's almost like finding your reason for being, your business's reason for being. It becomes very, not to get all emotional about it, but it actually is a very emotional thing, because your competitive edge is, it's all this like tangible stuff. I'm taller, I'm faster, I'm whatever it is that I am. But at the end of the day, 90%, the majority of reason why someone makes a sale with you versus someone else is that you have established an emotional connection. So on some level, you have uncovered what that unstated emotional thing is that's going on with that person, and you have made them feel like you are the best or only solution for that thing that they either don't know how to articulate or don't want to articulate. So in a way, you kind of have to be a mind reader. You kind of see what's going on in the tea leaves and say, oh, I have a general sense for so I don't want to say too much about my clients, but they're people that don't realize how much power they actually have in their business, or there are people that get caught up in like the minutia, the tangibles of the business, but don't realize that the energy that they bring, or it's the experience, or whatever is going on in the zeitgeist, coupled with what's going on tangibly with them, actually is. And I think my favorite example is this startup that she was initially a client and now I'm on her advisory board. It wasn't so much the product or the service that she was selling, but what she was creating for people by virtue of the fact that she had started this business. So what she wanted to do ultimately is she helps really busy dual income families kind of save time and hassle as they're making very large purchase decisions. To have a busy family realize that they have time back, it means I can spend time with my kids. I can put my kids to bed. We can go out to dinner. Mm-hmm. All these things that people realize that they will get back by virtue of having this business was actually her superpower. And understanding that on that emotional, intangible level is really rewarding. And that's really where, once that light bulb goes off, you understand better your future product development, your service development. You understand better how you sell, how you market. You even have and I know you all talk about this as well, you also understand how to measure the life and health of your business. You know what business metrics are important, and you know what business metrics are, interesting, but not important to knowing if you're doing well or not. And just being able to uncover that moment just kind of creates this landscape for you. And you get very excited about all the opportunities that just present themselves because you start to see things a little bit more three-dimensionally, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
So for the person that you were working with, has she already grown her business as a result of that, or has she added products?
She significantly pivoted her business.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So as a virtue of us going through the exercise, getting to that aha moment caused the pivot. And so with this new pivot, we can see better what the multiple revenue streams are. And we know how to market to these multiple revenue streams. We know better who our customer segments are. And that becomes extremely exciting. Another client I have, by virtue of going through that exercise, well, we know how to scale. And a part of her business that she thought she never could grow, it turns out, no, actually, sweetie, you can grow it, and you can grow it by 5-fold or 10-fold just because we have decided to look at it differently. And that's really what makes it so much fun.
Yeah. So true.
What about relationships? Is the relationship for the people that you've worked with? I should go back to Susan about this. If, obviously your patients are who you have the relationships with, but you've used technology and you've really gotten to know them as a whole person, not just fixing one thing. How has that impacted your business?
Well, from an employer role, my employees, I've had long-term many times. I even had one that moved out of the state, who now, through technology, is still doing my books, which is very, very nice. But when it comes to patients, like you were mentioning before, Marissa, that you really have to develop that emotional connection. Emotions are what sell. I don't care what you're doing. If there isn't an emotional connection, if you feel like you can't offer something that is going to be emotionally connected with your client, that's why they come back. That's why when you make those kind of connections, that's when they refer their family members in. That's when they refer their friends in. Because a lot of times you believe in something unless you get them better and then they feel like you really care. So for me, it's always making that emotional connection. And because I am a smaller practice, I have the opportunity and the ability to really spend that time. And that time is how I build my relationships. Again, I'm a smaller business, and I really try to work with people one-on-one because they're just not getting that. And frankly, that's how I find the solutions and the answers, by doing that as well.
But what's interesting about that? I think, and I understand that you like the size of your business and it works for you, and you're able to give that special attention and treatment to your patients. I would suggest that any size business, if they understood who their right customers were, then they know what to listen for if they can't listen for everything like you can, because you've made the choice to listen for everything, and that's how you treat holistically. Larger business, using data or whatever it is, they can decide what the most important things are, out of the list of 1 to 10, what the most important things are to listen for and solve based on what they're listening for. I think it's possible. Can it be done to that exquisite level that you're doing it? I don't know.
Well, those are all really good points. And one of the things I was even mentioning to Heidi on the way over here is that, even if I can spend that time up front, then I can outsource that to a clinical nutritionist to follow through on it. And again, I'm the one that might be establishing the relationship. They may be carrying on the torch of that relationship. But the idea is being able to spend that time and then outsourcing it and hiring someone else to do some of the things that I may be able to do, but might be better suited for somebody else. And then I can go on to the next client, because that's how I expand my business. That's how I expand my practice. Again, outsourcing, hiring other people to do the things that I don't necessarily have to do that. I want to focus on what I can do and let other people do what they can do, and then that way I don't have to have my hands in all the pots all the time. So those are really good points, because again, I am purposely staying in a specific area in my practice, but the idea is I don't want to do all that work either, right. And so I want to outsource that. Outsourcing has probably been one of the most successful things that I've done, especially with the internet now. You can outsource to so many places. Absolutely. People can log into your computers, you can hire out other people. And that's, I think, for any smaller business. Now, you might be dealing with larger businesses, but for smaller businesses, I think that's one of the best things you can do right from the start is outsource. Outsource some of the things that you don't want to do yourself, or you don't have the skill set to do, so that you can focus on what you're good at and what you enjoy doing and how you can grow your business. And,
absolutely. I remember in my corporate life, this is ages ago, it's like from the time of the Flintstones, it feels like, in my corporate life, I made a lot of strategic decisions by saying we should stop doing X, because the amount of money it costs to do X is at the expense of other opportunities that are so much better. And a lot of people, and the reason why I bring this up is it feels very much like what you're just saying, is that I could do it, but someone else could do it better. So why wouldn't I think about finding my strategic partners so that I can keep on keeping the focus on what I do well, but then also other people are experts, and that's okay with that. There is beauty in saying I will no longer invest in doing this because it's not serving me anymore. And then frankly, those people know it's not serving them either. And I think there is a good way of saying this is no longer my client, or this is no longer my specialty, this is no longer a service I provide, because whoever would ever come to you for any of those things they'd just be unhappy. And why should we make people, people should have what's going to serve them best. Why should we stand in their way of doing that?
Right. Also, I think it's really important as you're looking at scaling is really thinking about, and I went through this exercise with a client and it was really challenging because they were pretty big and they were offering a lot of services. And so we looked at really firing 5% of the clients in order to open up and allow room to manage and to take care of those clients that we had to allow us to grow and attract the right type of clients. So we went through this exercise and we started seeing that really we had a lot of clients that we were serving that we were actually losing money on. But, the individuals who were working with them, they were fighting for them, but the time that everybody spent was just too much. So at the end of the day, when we finally finished that exercise, and it took 10, 12 months, a long time to transition and to really find a better place for them. But at the end, it was great because we allowed ourselves to swim upstream, to target the ideal clients we were looking for, to really hone in on what that client looks like, and to not settle for just bringing a client in just because we want to bring them in.
Absolutely.
And sometimes people do that. You want to take the client because you think it will help your business, and then you find you get sucked in. And I've done this with mine, is I take on a client and I think, why did I do that? It's just so much work, and you're seeing that it's just not a good fit, and you knew it going into it, but you just thought, well, why not, right?
Well, interestingly, over the summer, I had a couple of exploratories, and someone asked me to submit a proposal. I met with them in person, and got the sense that the goalposts were always going to move with this client. And I said, on the one hand, I've got bills to pay. But on the other hand, the goalposts are always going to move. And at the end of the day, I sent him a note and I said, I think you've got a great team in place. I don't think I would be successful for you. And it wouldn't be right for me to take this money from you knowing that it wouldn't be successful. And I had an adult drink.
But doesn't it feel good to do that? We learn as we go. I can't even tell you. I meet people and I think I can't do that.
I was so happy that I did it because I knew that ultimately we would make each other miserable.
Right.
And I've got better things to do with my time than to make people miserable.
Right. And the next deal that comes along is going to be better for you, more profitable, and it's going to make you happy.
Yes.
So
it's true. When what I wanted to do was build a community, I just didn't even know where to stop in terms of what that community was going to look like. And very quickly, I have discovered that if I can just focus on bringing people into the room that are going to make a difference for each other, that's the unique thing that I know how to do. And I can team them up with somebody else who's going to make a difference. And over and over and over, businesses are growing when people are members of Growth Stage Tech. And then for the people that I can't help, I have discovered a partner who can take that corporate partnership piece of the equation and run with it. And it's like a big relief for me. So then I'm just focusing on exactly what it is that matters to each individual member, to the point where they're saying, you really do know who we are personally. And in community organizations, it's very rare.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm beginning to, I'm learning with everybody else that that's really what it's going to take. So when we think about your competitive advantage, sometimes it's the relationship, sometimes that it's something that you do that nobody else does, but there aren't too many things like that anymore. And the place where that's really hurting the most is retail. Yeah. So I don't know if you've had any experience in the retail world, Heidi, and you come the closest to it, Susan, but I've been talking to a lot of people that have worked in the retail industry lately.
I used to work in retail.
So did I. And we're going to talk about that a little more in our show next week, and specifically around jewelry.
Oh, interesting.
So for Valentine's Day, we're going to talk about that. And why not?
Yeah, perfect.
But in the retail industry, just in terms of a competitive advantage, sometimes service isn't enough. So do you have any advice? You're all experts in various aspects of retail. It hits all of your businesses. Do you have any advice for people that are in retail businesses or in retail businesses, jewelry or something that is typically sold that way? Do you have any advice for them on their competitive advantage?
Perhaps I'm stating the obvious, but I think it's very important in this day and age that people, if you have a brick and mortar, if you don't, but if you have a brick and mortar, you need to have a good web presence. Absolutely essential, because people are shopping. I was just reading the other day, they were talking about, will the millennials close out Costco and Sam's Club? And the questions were put out saying that the millennials are buying everything online. So, the people that are going to Costco might be people my age or families or suburbanites. Well, I'm not really sure who the exact demographic is, but they're the ones that are going to Costco. Millennials are buying on box.com, and they're getting their toilet paper and their paper towels sent that way. When people shop, they want to have an online presence. Make it easy for them, make it affordable for them, send them coupons, make sure that it fits on mobile devices. I know those are all the obvious things, but I think when you're in retail, you've got to have that competitive edge. Especially if you're a brick and mortar, you have to have both, because I'm going to find someplace else. If I can't find it or research it online, I'm going to go somewhere else. So I think that's quite important. And but again, doing it, saying it is one thing, doing it is another, right? And implementing strategies and programs are key.
Understanding your footprint, as far as you start getting involved in something, next thing you know, you get scope creep, I call it, and you start going out there and you're like, okay, and you get so thin that you can't really do and sell to the people who are going to buy your product and use it. And the thing about social media is that people can put you in business and keep you going and make a lot of money for you by just saying, I tried this medical wipe from the surface and it killed 99.9% of bacteria. And it did this. And so next thing you know, and they show a picture of it, everyone's out there wanting it, right? They want to go out and have this little thing, and it's not a big company, it's a little startup. But then you have one person who has one bad situation happen, and next thing you know, that can run rampant too. So you have to be able to manage every aspect of what goes on in the retail world, because and it's hard to keep an eye on it all. There's great tools out there that you can use, that you can track and you can communicate and you can streamline and you can hopefully mitigate some of the, what I call crisis management and the bad press. But being able to look at all of that all the time is really critical in retail. Also, being able to find something very unique. And it escapes me the name of the shoe store that sends you the shoes overnight. Zappos. Okay. They figured out how to do something really well. You don't like them, you send them back. No charge. Overnight. So my girlfriend said, you don't have the right shoes for this. Go to Zappos. You can have them for tomorrow. And I'm like, what? Really? You can? Because I hadn't really checked out Zappos. But then I hear it, and then someone else, and everyone knows about Zappos. So it's really being able to figure out what that one thing is in retail that makes you different.
And they are not the only ones that deliver overnight. They were the first.
Right. So everybody remembers them. Yeah.
Right.
So everybody else jumps on the bandwagon. Whoever's out of the gate and around the fence first usually can win the race, right? And people remember that winner. So
absolutely. Although, sometimes being last to market, okay, if you're best to market.
Yes, I agree.
So there's, there is value in doing something right as opposed to hasty. The one thing I would add quickly is a lot of really smart retailers out there are creating this sense of community. So my favorite example is Sephora. Sephora does a really nice job of encouraging all of its users to say, ask questions of what did you all think of this product? And then other people are encouraged to participate and say how the experience was for them. Sephora also has a lot of really nice color matching tools, not only online, but when you walk into the store environment, they can virtually match every single skin tone. You walk up to someone and then they use some sort of fancy skin tone matching algorithm, and then they point you to the makeup brand that best will suit whatever your needs are. So this idea of community and marketing of one, we want to feel connected. We just want to feel connected on our own terms.
On your own terms. That is really, there's a large organization or a very fast growing organization in town that started out as kind of a nobody. and I am not going to say who it is, who is growing at an exponential rate. And it is because they are personalizing the online experience in any aspect you can possibly imagine of health, beauty, and wellness. It's amazing what they're doing. And then they're moving into higher end services. I had no idea you can get anything you want practically online, delivered to you, a service or anything else.
You can try on your glasses online.
Absolutely.
You scan your face in, and then you put different glasses
You
on.
can get your eyes
next
checked
thing you know,
online.
and you
I
just
need
you
that
never have to
information.
and then you just give them your prescription, and next thing you know, they're your glasses, and you already know what they're going to look like on you.
Alternative, you can check your eyes online. It's like more optometrist than ophthalmologist, but
I worked with a company that was looking at that, where they could scan and look at your eye. It was really kind of interesting. They're using it on iPads actually for some of the when they're doing the development of the glasses.
Oh, that's interesting.
They can do it on an iPad now. It's really cool.
Love that.
Yeah.
Is there any area where in the wellness area that you're noticing, Susan, where technology is starting to get even more, create more personalized experiences?
Well, it's not necessarily in my field, but in the allopathic medicine, yes. You're able to get online. You're able to do blood pressures. You're able to check inside the eye. I mean, there's so many things that are occurring right now through technology. Virtual relationships with doctors are going to become the new.
Telemedicine.
Telemedicine is big, and it's happening now. And there's quite a bit that can be done. So yes, it's changing the face of how people are going to be using healthcare. So it's really fascinating. It's really exciting, and particularly for people who, if they can't get somewhere very quickly, even though more people are moving into the urban areas, but for people in rural areas, this is really going to be a game changer. Because again, a lot of medicine is expensive, and a lot of specialty doctors are not going to be available in smaller places. They're available in the larger metropolis areas and the larger hospitals. So yes, it's happening. Technology is really moving ahead, and robotics are huge now too. So that's changing. That's changing quite a bit as well. I just saw something the other day. It was just a little robot that actually was surgically putting back together some grape skin. It was just a funny little thing, and I thought, wow, they're getting robotics just to just to start sewing things. And of course, that kind of stuff is very well aware. People are very well aware those things do happen. Cameras inside and surgical things that are occurring now. So it's exciting. It is very, very exciting. But it will change the face of medicine, and for both good and perhaps not so good, because again, really, how are we going to serve people if we don't spend time with them? But I think there's so much that can be done. So I'm very excited for the future. I really am.
Manufacturing as well. When you talk about robotics, I'm very involved in the manufacturing associations, and their biggest challenge is finding people, because they think no one wants to be in the trades. So what they're trying to do is get them, let them see that this isn't a bad job. When you become a welder, you're not in there welding, you're using robotics to do the job. And so we're hoping that will allow us to keep jobs here and to keep manufacturers here, because that's a huge issue and a challenge that we're dealing with, just trying to figure out how to manufacture things in the US, keep it here, right here.
That's really interesting. There's this misperception that the jobs are going. It's just that no one is wanting to take the jobs because of this misperception.
Exactly.
And if
we have to re-educate.
If we re-educated and saw people what the opportunity could look like, they could actually make a decent wage.
A very good wage.
And I'm not talking like barely a living wage.
Oh, no.
You can make a very nice wage. And a lot of these very interesting, to your point, robotic manufacturing jobs for sure.
Oh,
absolutely.
Well, for those kinds of jobs, and even the technology jobs, there are certain technologies that are kind of expanding in the world of training, which is that's my 25-year background is training. And I am now starting to uncover a technology that is absolutely the most scalable thing I've ever seen in training organizations. And specifically, I'm thinking that maybe in the manufacturing world could be really incredible. So I think that what is just beginning to emerge is the value of virtual reality. Putting that into a training experience in a way that is really personalized is really going to make a difference. So we need to find a way to kind of highlight that as a trend, so that anybody can learn new jobs. Because if it was easier, right?
Totally. Yeah.
It would really make the difference. So any last words of advice for people who are looking for their competitive advantage and have either a retail business or a services business? Let's give everybody a minute.
I wasn't born in this country. I'm an immigrant. So I think opportunity is endless. It's really how bad do you want it? And what are you willing to work for? And I love that failure is fertilizer comment because that's precisely right. Keep on grinding, keep on hustling, because you'll get it. Once you know your superpower, you will absolutely get it.
Go ahead, Heidi.
I think really at the end of the day, it's understanding who you are and what you can do really well and being able to take that and deliver it to the market and hone in on the types of people you want to work with, the types of clients. Because I work with a ton of professional service firms, a product. We're selling an intellectual knowledge, but yet it's deeper than that. Because I can't tell you, a person can say, well, I have that information. You do, but you're not being nice. You're not working with them. You're not being true. And when they start figuring out their relationship and they start getting that heart and mind together, that's when the relationship works.
Okay.
That's when it closes.
Thank you. And Susan, 30 seconds, one piece of advice.
Ready, fire, aim. You don't need to know it all. Just get some of it done. Otherwise, you'll never
Just
do it.
keep moving.
Just
Thank
keep
you,
moving
Susan.
forward.
Thank you, Heidi.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Parisa.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody.
This was
This is
This is
50
great.
Shades of Business.